The sun hung high over the quiet streets of Milton Grove, a small suburban town where life moved at an unhurried pace. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon, and 11-year-old Jamal Walker pedaled his worn-out bicycle toward his favorite place in the world, the town library. Jamal wasn't like most kids his age. While others spent weekends glued to video games or kicking around a soccer ball, Jamal was happiest surrounded by books. They offered him adventures, wisdom, and hope, things he couldn't always find in his small house on Maple Lane, where he lived with his mother and two younger sisters. The library was a second home. As he approached its large glass doors, he greeted Ms. Florence, the elderly librarian who always had a smile for him. "Back for more stories, Jamal?" she teased. "Yes, ma'am," Jamal said, parking his bike and adjusting his backpack. "I'm on a mission to finish all the adventure books on the second floor." Ms. Florence chuckled. "Well, don't let the dragons get you." Jamal made his way upstairs, savoring the familiar scent of old paper and polished wood. He loved how quiet it was, with only the occasional rustle of pages turning. Finding a cozy corner by the window, he settled in with a book he'd been eager to read. Half an hour later, his peaceful moment was interrupted by a glint of something shiny near the bookshelf. Curious, Jamal set down his book and walked over. Lying on the floor was a sleek, black leather wallet. It looked expensive, with gold embossing on the edges. He picked it up hesitantly, his fingers brushing against its smooth surface. Jamal's heart raced as he opened the wallet. Inside, there was a thick stack of crisp $100 bills, at least a few $1,000s. His eyes widened at the sight. More money than he had ever seen in his life. There were also credit cards, an ID, and a small, neatly folded photograph of a man standing beside a shiny black car. For a moment, Jamal stood frozen. A whirlwind of thoughts rushed through his mind. What should I do? Should I take it to the front desk? What if someone accuses me of stealing it? But Jamal's mother had raised him to be honest, no matter how hard life got. Taking a deep breath, he tucked the wallet under his arm and marched back downstairs. Ms. Florence was surprised to see him so soon. "Finished already?" she asked, but then noticed the wallet in his hand. "I found this upstairs," Jamal said, holding it out to her. "I think someone lost it." "Mrs." Florence examined the wallet, her face a mix of surprise and relief. "Oh my goodness, this is Mr. Sterling's wallet," she exclaimed. "He's one of the library's biggest donors. I'll call him right away. You did the right thing, Jamal. Thank you." Jamal felt a surge of pride, but also a twinge of nervousness. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. The next morning, Jamal was back to his routine, helping his mother with chores and keeping an eye on his younger siblings. He had almost forgotten about the wallet until he heard a loud knock at the door. "Jamal, can you get that?" his mother called from the kitchen. Opening the door, Jamal froze in shock. Parked in front of their modest house was a gleaming black Rolls-Royce. A tall, sharply dressed man stepped out, his shoes clicking against the pavement. Jamal immediately recognized him from the photograph in the wallet. "Good morning," the man said in a deep, warm voice. "I'm Robert Sterling. You must be Jamal." Jamal stood frozen at the doorway, his mind racing to process what was happening. Behind Mr. Robert Sterling, the sleek Rolls-Royce seemed out of place on their narrow, cracked street, lined with modest homes and small gardens. "Yes, sir, I'm Jamal," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Sterling's serious expression softened as he smiled warmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he said, extending a hand. "You've done something remarkable, young man. May I come in?" Jamal hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. His mother, hearing the conversation, appeared at the door with a curious look. Her face registered surprise at the sight of the well-dressed man. "Good morning," Mr. Sterling greeted her, bowing his head slightly. "My name is Robert Sterling. Your son found my wallet yesterday at the library and returned it. I wanted to personally thank him." "Oh," Jamal's mother exclaimed, her voice tinged with pride. "That's kind of you to come all this way. Please, come in." The living room was small and tidy, with mismatched furniture that reflected years of careful upkeep. Jamal and his mother cleared a space on the worn sofa, and Mr. Sterling sat down, his polished demeanor contrasting sharply with the humble surroundings. "You must know," Mr. Sterling began, turning to Jamal, "that wallet contained more than money and cards. Inside was a photograph of my late wife. It's one of the few memories I carry of her every day. Losing it felt like losing a part of her all over again." His voice grew thick with emotion, and he paused to compose himself. "Your honesty means more to me than you can imagine." Jamal looked down, his cheeks burning with a mix of pride and embarrassment. I just thought it was the right thing to do, sir," he said quietly. "It was the right thing to do," Mr. Sterling replied firmly. "And in a world where doing the right thing isn't always easy, your actions stand out." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a gleaming gold coin engraved with intricate patterns. "This is a token of my gratitude. It's an heirloom, one I usually reserve for very special occasions." Jamal's eyes widened, and he hesitated to take it. "I don't know if I can accept that," he murmured. "Please, Mr. Sterling insisted. "This is more than a gift. It's a reminder of the good in the world, and you've shown me that today." Reluctantly, Jamal accepted the coin, turning it over in his hands. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and the weight of it felt significant in more ways than one. Later that evening, after Mr. Sterling had left, Jamal sat on his bed, staring at the coin. His mother came in and sat beside him, her face filled with pride. "You did something amazing, Jamal," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Not just for him, but for yourself. Honesty like that opens doors." Jamal wasn't sure what she meant by opening doors, but something about Mr. Sterling's visit had stirred something in him. He thought about the man's kind words, the fancy car, and the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. "I wonder what it's like to live a life like his," Jamal mused aloud. His mother smiled. "It's not about the car or the clothes, Jamal. It's about the choices we make. And today, you chose to be someone special." Jamal nodded, clutching the coin tightly in his palm. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his character and reshape his life in ways he could never have imagined. Bon dom. The following days at school and home passed uneventfully for Jamal. Life settled back into its usual rhythm: classes, chores, and afternoons spent at the library. But the memory of Mr. Sterling's visit lingered in his mind. He often found himself turning the gold coin over in his pocket, its polished surface catching the light. It wasn't until Thursday afternoon, while Jamal was studying at the library, that his world shifted again. As he flipped through a history book, a familiar deep voice startled him. "Good to see you again, Jamal." Looking up, Jamal saw Mr. Sterling standing by the table, his tailored suit and polished shoes as immaculate as before. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a warm smile on his face. "Mr. Sterling," Jamal exclaimed, rising to his feet. "What are you doing here?" "I've been thinking a lot about you," Mr. Sterling said, gesturing for Jamal to sit. "May I join you?" Jamal nodded, his curiosity piqued. Mr. Sterling placed the briefcase on the table and leaned forward slightly, his tone serious but kind. "You may not realize it, Jamal, but what you did for me wasn't just a kind act. It was a rare display of integrity. That's the kind of character I admire, and it's something the world desperately needs more of." Jamal blinked, unsure how to respond. He'd never thought of himself as anything special. "I run a foundation," Mr. Sterling continued, "one that supports young people with potential. I believe you're one of those people. I'd like to help you achieve more than you ever thought possible." Jamal stared at him, wide-eyed. "Me? But I'm just a kid. What could I possibly do?" Sterling smiled knowingly. "It's not about where you are now, Jamal. It's about where you can go. With the right opportunities, I believe you could do great things." He opened the briefcase, revealing a sleek tablet and a neatly bound packet of papers. "This is a scholarship application. If you're interested, my foundation will cover your tuition at Milton Academy, one of the top schools in the state. It's a place where you can access resources, mentorship, and a community that will help you grow. Think of it as a door to a bigger world." Jamal's heart raced. Milton Academy was a name he'd heard before, but only in passing. It was the kind of school for kids who lived in mansions, not on Maple Lane. I don't know," Jamal stammered. "I mean, it sounds amazing, but I've never even thought about something like this." "That's why I'm here, mister," Sterling said. "I want you to think about it. Talk to your mother. Take your time. But know this. You've already proven you have the qualities that matter most: integrity, determination, and kindness. The rest can be learned." That evening, Jamal sat with his mother at the kitchen table, the application spread out before them. "It's a big opportunity," his mother said, her voice tinged with emotion. "But it's also a big change. Are you ready for that, Jamal?" "I don't know, Mom," Jamal admitted, fiddling with the corner of the packet. "What if I don't fit in? What if I fail?" His mother reached over and took his hand. "You've faced challenges before, and you've always come out stronger. This is no different. Besides, Mr. Sterling wouldn't have offered this if he didn't believe in you." Jamal thought about her words long into the night, lying awake in bed with the gold coin in his hand. The idea of leaving his friends and familiar routines scared him, but the thought of what he could achieve excited him just as much. By morning, he'd made his decision. The next day, Jamal called Mr. Sterling. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. "I want to try." "Good choice, Jamal," Mr. Sterling replied. "Your journey is just beginning." Unbeknownst to Jamal, this decision would lead him to challenges far greater than he imagined, and lessons that would shape him into someone even he wouldn't recognize. Jamal stared out the car window as the city gave way to sprawling lawns, cobblestone paths, and towering buildings that seemed to belong in a movie. The campus of Milton Academy was everything he'd imagined and more: grand, intimidating, and worlds apart from his neighborhood. In the driver's seat, Mr. Sterling glanced at him with a reassuring smile. "Nervous?" he asked. Jamal nodded. "A little. That's normal. But remember, you belong here just as much as anyone else." They pulled up to the main entrance, where students in neat uniforms streamed into the building. Jamal stepped out of the car, gripping his new backpack tightly. Unlike the patched and faded bag he'd used at his old school, this one was sleek and brand new. A gift from Mr. Sterling. As they walked toward the admissions office, Jamal noticed the curious stares from other students. Some whispered to each other, and he could feel their eyes on him. He adjusted his tie nervously, feeling out of place in the crisp uniform that still felt stiff and foreign. Inside the office, a friendly woman named Mrs. Harrington greeted them. "Welcome to Milton Academy, Jamal," she said warmly. "We're so glad to have you here." She handed him a schedule and a map of the campus. "Your first class is English, just down the hall. And don't worry, mister. Sterling has arranged for a student guide to show you around for the first week." Jamal turned to see a boy about his age standing in the doorway. He was tall and confident, with neatly combed blonde hair and a blazer that fit like it was tailored. "Hey, I'm Ethan," the boy said, extending a hand. "Looks like I'm your guide." Jamal's first class was both exciting and overwhelming. The classroom was equipped with technology he'd only seen in movies: interactive screens, digital whiteboards, and sleek desks. As the teacher, Mrs. Livingston, began a discussion on To Kill a Mockingbird, Jamal listened carefully, eager to contribute. But when she called on him to share his thoughts, his nerves got the better of him. Well, Jamal began, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on him. I think the book shows how important it is to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Mrs. Livingston nodded approvingly. That's an excellent point, Jamal. Thank you for sharing. But from the corner of the room, a muffled snicker broke the moment. Jamal glanced over and saw a boy with slicked-back hair whispering something to the girl beside him. She stifled a laugh, and Jamal felt his cheeks burn. At lunch, Ethan noticed Jamal's silence. "Don't let those guys get to you," Ethan said, pointing to the same boy from earlier. "That's Carter. He thinks he runs this place, but he's all talk." Jamal nodded, though the encounter still weighed on him. Later that afternoon, Jamal found a quiet spot on campus to eat his sandwich and collect his thoughts. He was starting to wonder if he'd made the right choice coming here. "Mind if I sit here?" a voice asked. Jamal looked up to see a girl with curly black hair and glasses standing nearby. She wore the same uniform, but her blazer had a patch on it that read Student Council. "Sure," Jamal said hesitantly. "I'm Olivia," she said, sitting down. "I heard about you. You're the new scholarship student, right?" Jamal nodded, unsure if her tone was kind or condescending. "I think that's pretty cool," she said, surprising him. Not many kids would take on a place like this, especially coming from a different background. "Thanks," Jamal said, relaxing a little. Olivia leaned in conspiratorially. "Just so you know, Carter's harmless. Annoying, but harmless. Don't let him get to you." Jamal smiled for the first time that day. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." First victory. That evening, Jamal returned to his dorm room, a modest but comfortable space he shared with another student. As he unpacked, he pulled out the gold coin Mr. Sterling had given him. Holding it in his hand, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The day had been hard, but it wasn't impossible. He'd faced challenges before, and this was just another one to overcome. Placing the coin on his nightstand, Jamal whispered to himself, "I can do this." What he didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. The days ahead would test his courage, his values, and his determination in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The first week at Milton Academy felt like running a marathon. Jamal tried to absorb everything: new routines, challenging coursework, and navigating the maze-like campus. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't quite belong. It didn't help that Carter and his friends made sure to remind him of it. At lunch, in the hallways, even during gym class, they found ways to mock his every move. "Hey, scholarship kid!" Carter jeered one day as Jamal walked past their table in the cafeteria. "How's it feel to be a charity case?" Jamal clenched his fists, heat rising to his face. He wanted to respond, but Olivia's advice echoed in his mind. "Don't let him get to you." He kept walking, ignoring the laughter behind him. An unexpected opportunity. The turning point came during history class. Mr. Gardner, the teacher, announced a special project, a debate competition on civil rights. Each student would be assigned a side to argue, and the top debaters would represent the class in a school-wide competition. This is a chance to show not just your knowledge, but your ability to think critically and present a compelling argument, Mr. Gardner explained. The room buzzed with excitement, but Jamal felt a mix of nerves and curiosity. Public speaking wasn't his strength, but the topic intrigued him. "Jamal," Mr. Gardner said, handing him a card, "you'll argue for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Carter snickered from across the room. "Good luck, Walker. You're gonna need it." Jamal ignored him, focusing instead on the assignment. As he read through the provided materials, he realized this was a subject he cared deeply about. His mother had often told him stories of his great-grandfather, who had marched for equal rights in the 1960s. That night, he stayed up late in the library, researching historical speeches and gathering evidence for his argument. The debate showdown. The day of the debate arrived, and Jamal felt his stomach churn as he stood in front of the class. His opponent was, unsurprisingly, Carter. The smug grin on Carter's face only added to Jamal's anxiety. "Jamal, you may begin," Mr. Gardner said. Jamal took a deep breath and began speaking. At first, his voice wavered, but as he delved into the historical significance of the Civil Rights Act, his confidence grew. He quoted key figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Thurgood Marshall, emphasizing the courage it took to fight for justice. When it was Carter's turn, he delivered his argument with the same cocky demeanor he carried everywhere. But his points lacked depth, relying more on flashy language than solid evidence. As the debate progressed, Jamal realized something important. He wasn't just holding his own, he was winning. When the time came for the class to vote, the results were clear. Jamal had convinced the majority of his peers. "Well done, Jamal," Mr. Gardner said, his voice filled with genuine praise. "You'll be representing our class in the school-wide competition next month." The room erupted in applause, but none felt sweeter than Ethan's enthusiastic cheer from the back. Growing reputation. News of Jamal's victory spread quickly. For the first time since arriving at Milton Academy, he felt a sense of belonging. Olivia congratulated him in the hallway, and Ethan gave him a high five during lunch. Even students who didn't know him began to nod in recognition when they passed him. Carter, however, wasn't pleased. "Don't get cocky, Walker," he muttered as they crossed paths. "You got lucky." Jamal just smiled. He wasn't about to let Carter's words bring him down. A call from Mr. Sterling. That evening, Jamal received a surprise call. It was Mr. Sterling. "I heard about your debate victory," Mr. Sterling said. "Congratulations, Jamal. I'm proud of you." "Thank you, sir," Jamal replied, his chest swelling with pride. "This is just the beginning," Mr. Sterling continued. "Opportunities like this will keep coming, and I know you'll rise to the challenge. Remember, success isn't just about winning. It's about what you learn along the way." Jamal nodded, even though Mr. Sterling couldn't see him. He was starting to understand what the man had meant when he said this journey would open doors. Maitinna. As Jamal hung up, he looked at the gold coin on his nightstand. It felt heavier now, not because of its weight, but because of what it symbolized. A promise to himself to keep striving, no matter how hard the road became. And Jamal knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The weeks after Jamal's debate victory brought a mix of triumph and turbulence. While many students began to see him in a new light, some, like Carter, clung to their disdain. Jamal found himself walking a fine line between earning respect and standing out too much. Br. A harsh lesson. It happened on a chilly Wednesday morning. Jamal arrived at his locker to find the word "fake" scrawled across it in bold black marker. He froze, his stomach sinking as students passed by, some whispering, others pretending not to notice. Ethan appeared moments later. "Man, that's low," he said, frowning as he examined the graffiti. "Do you think it was Carter?" Jamal asked, though he already suspected the answer. Ethan nodded. "Sounds like his style. He doesn't know how to lose gracefully." Jamal's first instinct was to march over to Carter and confront him, but he remembered what Mr. Sterling had said. Success isn't just about winning. It's about what you learn along the way. Taking a deep breath, he reported the vandalism to the school administration instead. Later that day, Carter was called to the principal's office. Though there was no direct evidence linking him to the graffiti, his smug expression as he passed Jamal in the hallway said it all. "Enjoy it while it lasts, Walker," Carter muttered under his breath. Jamal didn't respond, but the words stung. An invitation. That evening, as Jamal sat in his dorm room reviewing homework, his phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Student council meeting tomorrow. We're discussing plans for the spring charity drive. Want to join? Jamal stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Joining the student council sounded exciting, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to take on more responsibility. Then he thought about how much Olivia had helped him. I'll be there. Dakinei, you're stepping up. The next day, Jamal arrived at the council meeting to find Olivia and a handful of other students gathered around a large table in a bright, modern conference room. Charts and flyers covered the walls, and a buzz of energy filled the air. "Welcome, Jamal," Olivia said, waving him over. "Glad you could make it." The meeting focused on the upcoming charity drive, a long-standing Milton Academy tradition where students raised funds for local community programs. "We want to try something new this year," Olivia explained. "Instead of the usual bake sale and auction, we're thinking about hosting a cultural showcase. Music, art, dance, anything that celebrates diversity." Jamal perked up at the idea. "That sounds amazing," he said. "Maybe we could also include storytelling. I know a lot of people who have powerful stories to share." The room fell silent for a moment. Then Olivia smiled. "That's a fantastic idea. Would you be willing to lead that part of the showcase?" Jamal hesitated, the weight of the offer sinking in. But as he glanced around the room, he saw encouraging faces looking back at him. "I'd love to," he said, feeling a spark of excitement. Carter's return. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning. Jamal threw himself into organizing the storytelling segment, working late into the night to create a lineup of performers and draft a script for the event. He even reached out to Mr. Sterling for advice, who praised him for taking initiative. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, Carter reappeared, this time as a self-proclaimed critic of the charity drive. "Storytelling? Really?" Carter sneered during lunch. "What are we, 5 years old? Nobody's going to care about your little sob stories, Walker." Jamal's face flushed, but Olivia stepped in before he could respond. "Actually, Carter, the showcase has already gotten approval from the administration, so unless you have a better idea, maybe sit this one out." Carter glared but said nothing, retreating with his tray. "Don't let him get to you," Olivia said, turning to Jamal. Jamal nodded, though the doubt Carter had planted lingered. The day of the showcase. When the day of the cultural showcase arrived, the auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students, faculty, and even some parents filled the seats, eager to see what the council had prepared. Jamal stood backstage, clutching his notes and rehearsing his introduction for the storytelling segment. His heart pounded as he peeked through the curtain and saw the large crowd. "You're going to be great," Olivia said, giving him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. When it was finally Jamal's turn, he stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinding him for a moment. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Stories have the power to bring us together. They remind us that no matter where we come from or what challenges we face, we all have something to share." He introduced each storyteller, from a girl who spoke about her journey as an immigrant to a boy who shared his experience overcoming a disability. The audience hung on every word, and by the end of the segment, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Traujic Chaos, a victory of a different kind. After the showcase, students and teachers came up to congratulate Jamal. Even some of Carter's usual entourage offered compliments. "That was incredible, Jamal," Olivia said, beaming. "You've got a real talent for bringing people together." For the first time since arriving at Milton Academy, Jamal felt like he truly belonged, not because he had won a competition or impressed someone powerful, but because he had made a difference. As he walked back to his dorm that night, the gold coin in his pocket felt lighter, almost as if it was reflecting the warmth he now felt in his heart. The success of the cultural showcase sent ripples through Milton Academy. Jamal was no longer just the scholarship kid. He was now known as someone who could lead, inspire, and bring people together. Teachers praised his initiative. Students started inviting him to join study groups, and even Carter seemed to retreat into the background for a while. But as Jamal's reputation grew, so did the challenges. Leadership came with its own set of pressures, and not everyone was happy with the attention he was getting. An anonymous threat. One chilly morning, as Jamal reached his locker, he noticed a folded piece of paper taped to the door. Curious, he opened it. The note read, "Stay in your lane. You don't belong here." The words felt like a slap in the face. Jamal glanced around the hallway, but no one seemed to be paying attention. His first instinct was to crumple the note and throw it away, but he stopped himself. He decided to show it to Olivia and Ethan later. As the day wore on, Jamal struggled to focus. The note had dredged up old insecurities he thought he'd overcome. Carter strikes again. During gym class that afternoon, Carter approached Jamal on the basketball court. His smirk was back, and his tone was mocking. "Looks like you've got some fans, Walker," he said. "Or maybe not." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Carter shrugged, tossing the ball lazily from hand to hand. "I heard some people aren't too happy about how you're acting like you own the place. Guess not everyone's impressed by your little charity act." Jamal clenched his fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Jealousy doesn't look good on you, Carter," he said, walking away before the situation could escalate. "You see foreign support from friends." Later that evening, Jamal showed Olivia and Ethan the note he had found. Olivia read it with a deep frown, her brow furrowed in thought. "This is serious," she said. "You should report it." Ethan nodded. "She's right. Whoever wrote this wants to intimidate you. If you let it slide, they'll think they can get away with more." Jamal hesitated. "But what if reporting it makes things worse? What if they start targeting me more?" Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've already proven you're stronger than they think. This is just another challenge, and you don't have to face it alone." Jamal's heart swelled with gratitude for his friends. Their support reminded him that he wasn't the scared kid who first stepped onto Milton's campus. He was growing into someone stronger, someone who could handle adversity. Private conversation. The next day, Jamal took Olivia's advice and brought the note to the principal's office. Principal Conway, a stern but fair woman in her 50s, listened carefully as Jamal explained what had happened. "I'm proud of you for bringing this to my attention," she said. "Bullying, especially in this form, has no place at Milton Academy." "Thank you, ma'am," Jamal said, relieved to have her support. After their meeting, Jamal felt a weight lift from his shoulders, but he knew this wasn't over. Whoever was behind the note wasn't likely to stop so easily. A surprising ally. Later that week, Jamal was heading to the library when he found Carter leaning against a wall, arms crossed. "Got a minute?" Carter asked. Jamal frowned. "Why would I want to talk to you?" "Because I've got something to say," Carter replied, his usual smugness replaced with a hint of sincerity. "Look, I know I've been a jerk, and I know I haven't exactly made it easy for you around here." Jamal raised an eyebrow, unsure where this was going. "But I didn't write that note," Carter continued. "I've done a lot of stupid stuff, but I don't play dirty like that." Jamal studied Carter's face, searching for any sign of deceit. To his surprise, Carter seemed genuine. "Why are you telling me this?" Jamal asked. Carter sighed. "Because I'm starting to realize that you're tougher than I thought. And honestly, I'm tired of trying to bring you down. So, consider this my way of saying sorry. For everything." Jamal didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to hold on to his anger, but another part recognized the courage it took for Carter to admit he'd been wrong. "Thanks," Jamal said finally. "I appreciate that." The mystery deepens. Though Carter's apology was unexpected, it didn't solve the mystery of the anonymous note. Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching, waiting for him to stumble. But instead of letting fear take over, he used it as fuel. He threw himself into his studies, his extracurricular activities, and his friendships, determined to prove that he deserved to be at Milton Academy as much as anyone else. One evening, as he sat at his desk working on a history paper, his phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Sterling. "Challenges are just opportunities in disguise. Keep pushing forward. Proud of you." Jamal smiled, his resolve strengthening. Whoever was trying to bring him down didn't realize they were only making him stronger. The anonymous note lingered in Jamal's mind for weeks. Though he kept pushing forward, excelling in his studies, and earning the respect of his peers, the unease never fully left him. Whoever had written the note wasn't just targeting him, they were trying to shake his confidence and make him question his place at Milton Academy. But Jamal was determined to find out who it was. It's Mum. A mysterious encounter. One rainy afternoon, Jamal was walking back to his dorm when he noticed a figure ducking into the maintenance building near the library. Something about the way they moved caught his attention. It was hurried, almost furtive. Curiosity got the better of him. Jamal quietly followed, peeking through the partially open door. Inside, he saw a student hunched over a desk, writing furiously on a piece of paper. Jamal stepped closer, and the floor creaked beneath his foot. The student whipped around, revealing none other than Jacob, a quiet boy from their grade who rarely spoke in class. "What are you doing here?" Jacob asked, his voice panicked. "I could ask you the same thing," Jamal said, stepping inside. His eyes darted to the paper on the desk, and his heart skipped a beat. The handwriting matched the note he'd received. Jacob's face paled as he realized Jamal had pieced it together. Diverti. The confrontation. "Why?" Jamal asked, his voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Why would you do this to me? I barely even know you." Jacob looked away, guilt and frustration warring on his face. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered. "Try me," Jamal said, crossing his arms. Jacob sighed, slumping into a chair. "It's not about you, okay? It's about me. My family's been going to Milton for generations. My dad, my granddad, they all expect me to be the best. But then you showed up, this scholarship kid who everyone suddenly loves, and I just—" He trailed off, his voice trembling. "You felt like I was taking something from you," Jamal said quietly. Jacob nodded. "I know it's stupid. I know it's wrong. But seeing you succeed, it made me feel like I was failing." Jamal stared at him, a mix of anger and understanding swirling in his chest. He hadn't expected this. Jacob wasn't a villain. He was just a kid struggling with his own insecurities. A hard decision. Jamal took a deep breath. "What you did hurt," he said. "You made me doubt myself when I was already trying so hard to fit in here." Jacob looked down, shame written all over his face. "But," Jamal continued, "I also know what it's like to feel like you don't measure up, so I'm not going to report you." Jacob's head snapped up. "You're not?" "No," Jamal said firmly. "But you need to own up to what you did. Apologize to me, and more importantly, stop tearing other people down just to feel better about yourself." Jacob hesitated, then nodded. "I'm sorry, Jamal, for the note, for everything. I swear it won't happen again." Moving forward, word of the incident never spread, and Jacob kept his promise. Over the next few weeks, Jamal noticed a shift in Jacob's behavior. He seemed quieter, more introspective. Though they didn't become friends, there was a mutual respect between them. Meanwhile, Jamal continued to thrive. He represented his class in the debate competition, earning second place in the finals. He also led a new project with the student council, organizing a mentorship program to help incoming scholarship students adjust to life at Milton. One day, as he was packing up after a meeting, Olivia approached him. You know, Jamal, she said, smiling, you've changed this school. People are starting to see each other differently because of you. Jamal looked down at the gold coin in his pocket, a symbol of the journey he'd taken since finding that wallet in the library. I guess I've learned that being here isn't just about fitting in, he said. It's about standing up, even when it's hard. Olivia nodded, and you've done that better than anyone. A visit from Mr. Sterling. On a sunny Saturday, Jamal was surprised to see Mr. Sterling's Rolls-Royce pull up outside the dorms. The older man stepped out, looking as sharp as ever, but his expression was softer than usual. I heard about the mentorship program, Mr. Sterling said, shaking Jamal's hand. You've done incredible work here. Thank you, Jamal said, his voice filled with gratitude. But I couldn't have done any of this without your help. Mr. Sterling placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. You've taken every opportunity and turned it into something meaningful. That's all you. And I couldn't be prouder. As they walked together across the campus, Jamal felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known before. He realized that the journey wasn't just about proving himself to others. It was about becoming the kind of person who could lift others up. Epilogue. Years later, Jamal would look back on his time at Milton Academy as the turning point of his life. He would go on to mentor others, just as he had been mentored, and carry forward the lessons of resilience, integrity, and kindness. And through it all, he would remember the gold coin, not just as a gift from Mr. Sterling, but as a symbol of the power of honesty and the doors it could open.